Good Wednesday evening, everyone. This is another edition of the Carolinas Weather Group. We're kind of expanding outside of the Carolinas area tonight with the state of Alabama. So anyone who is watching there tonight, thank you for coming on the show. Tonight, our topic is about the Super Outbreak of April 2011, and we're specifically talking about April 27th. The line of tornadoes that moved through the state of Alabama. We have two great guests on tonight. We have Mark Prater, Chief Meteorologist at WIAT, CBS 42 in Birmingham, Alabama. We also will have on Wes Wyatt, who is at WRBC, Fox 6 News in Birmingham, Alabama. He'll join us in just a little bit. He had TV duty, and he went to go grab a bite to eat, so he should be on shortly. And as well, we have our regular character of panelist members who let them introduce herself here in just a second. Before we do that, I'm going to kind of go over a couple of housekeeping things. This is a live broadcast that you are watching on April the 22nd, just a little bit after 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, a little bit after 7 in the Central Time Zone. We also do a podcast that will be available on Thursday morning once we get everything uploaded, that you can go to your favorite iTunes store or app or department, wherever you need to go to download that podcast. You're more than likely to do that. And then if you're watching this sometime later on, we appreciate you watching here on our YouTube channel as well. Also, we have a question and answer session. All you got to do is click the little link and you can send us a question. We'll put it into our discussion tonight. You can also tweet us or send us Facebook messages. A lot of our panelists will be watching that as well. So we'll get your questions covered if you send them in. So before we introduce our guests, I'm going to toss it around to our panelists. It's been kind of an active week here in the Carolinas and Virginia and Tennessee with weather-wise, so we can briefly talk about that before we go into tonight's main topic. So I'm going to start over in Catawba County with Joey Mosseller. Joey?
Thank you, Scotty. Yeah, it was an interesting Monday, I guess, here in the area with some severe weather. Not at my house. Luckily, I did hear thunder for the first time since like October. But yeah, other than that, it was actually pretty boring. I did notice an interesting thing today. Shout out to our former guests, Grant Gilmore and Tim Buckley. I actually have weather data at my house again. But I noticed this morning we started out at 46 degrees and made it to 78 this afternoon. So that was kind of interesting, but that's about all the news out of Catawba County. It's pretty boring. But luckily, one of our panelists did get to see a little bit of hail Monday. Kit, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us about your excitement.
Well, thank you, Joey. Well, first off, I'd like to give a shout out to Stephen Potter and Eddie Tucker. They were my storm chase crew. We headed out about 4 o'clock, I think, and ended up sort of wavering on which storm we wanted to get, and got one that went through Gaston County all the way up through the university area. We got it just east of Mountain Island Lake, I think, and we had decent hail. It hailed for about a minute and a half, really strong, about dime size, and then it moved on to the university area where Cody was. But a little bit about myself. I am a junior meteorology major, and I'm also the newly instated lead forecaster for the Gaston weather page. So if you live in Gaston County area, go like that page. Just a quick little shameless plug. And I'll toss it back to Joey.
All right, thank you, Kit. I guess we'll introduce Cody. At what point do we have to start calling Cody President Cody? I mean, does that happen at some point in the tenure here? Anyway,
he's actually Supreme Chancellor.
His first acting act as president was to change the name. Got it. Cody, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cody Ledbetter. I'm a junior at UNC Charlotte, meteorology major. Yeah, as they just mentioned, I'll be the storm president, or AMS NWA chapter here at UNC Charlotte next year. Yeah, Monday my friend Eric Bunker and I just went on top of the parking deck after class and caught some pretty decent-sized hail from the same storm that Kent got, so that was pretty fun. And then the lightning storm came about 30 minutes later. That one wasn't quite as fun, so but I guess with that I'll pass it back to Joey.
All right. All right, and I guess before we get into our two that do their interviewing, we'll toss it down for our last bit of, I don't even know if he had any excitement this week, but we'll go down to the future Austin Taylor, like we like to call him.
Well, we had no action this week. Everything stayed on the western side of the county towards Sanford. They had like 3 severe thunderstorm warnings, passed right to my west. Got to hear thunder. It was exciting. And we got up to about 80 degrees today, about 3:30. And since I'm 15, I can't drive or storm chase. I want to give a shout out to one of my friends in South Florida, Kayla March, who's been watching every week for the last few months.
Awesome. Good to have you, Caleb. And then I'm gonna toss it to Ricky, who had to put up with some headaches over the weekend. As most of you guys know, he's the weekend meteorologist at WCYB in the Tri-Cities area. And Ricky had meteorology duties as well as forecasting for NASCAR this weekend, and that didn't work out too well, did it, Ricky? Well, in the end, it did, but
yeah, I mean, my job was pretty good. I mean, I did my job. I called that hole like 1:30 to 3, and we managed to get 20 to 30 laps of the race in once it dried out. But yeah, forecasting was a little bit interesting. We pretty much knew it was going to rain. The whole thing was trying not to sell it as a total washout when 90% of the data pointed to that, and then a little bit of the high-res data pointed to we would have that hole. But in the end, we ended up getting it done right before a big line of thunderstorms came ripping through the area with severe thunderstorm warnings. So it was an eventful weekend for sure across the Tri-Cities.
And did you do any storm chasing? I know you and I were trying to talk a little bit Monday, but I think you guys got stuck behind that traffic on 77.
Me and a few other of our meteorology majors here at campus went out. I usually live stream back to NBC Charlotte for Brad Panovich, and we were attempting to do that Monday, but we were having internet connection issues, and so that didn't go as well. So we did go out. We got a little bit of hail, and we were going to be on a tornado warning cell down towards Chester County, South Carolina, but a semi-truck decided to flip over on the interstate, literally like 200 feet in front of us, and they closed the interstate. The fun part was got to drive backwards on the interstate for about a mile or so to get back to the exit, but that was our excitement. Instead of a tornado, we had a flipped semi-truck.
That was interesting. We were actually, my chase partner, Chris, and myself, we actually got on that tornado-warned storm and got to the south of it and was able to see the wall cloud and what was going to be a funnel, and then the trees got in the way, so we wasn't able to see the full funnel, but we did get to see a little bit of wall cloud action, so we were thankful for that, and then we saw the mess on 77 and was thankful that we took the back way instead of 77. So enough about the Carolinas weather. Let's talk about what the show topic tonight is, and that's the tornado outbreak of April 27th in 2011. And throughout the month of May, we've been talking about severe weather, and last week we documented the April 16th outbreak in eastern North Carolina. And today we're going to talk about the April 27th outbreak. We're coming up on the anniversary next week of the event. And tonight we have Mark Prater on. Again, he is with the Birmingham station, CBS Birmingham station. And we also have Wes Wyatt on, who is with the Fox station in Birmingham, Alabama. And I got distracted because I seen Mark's little underscore thing there. It says Wes Wyatt's underscore. So that made me laugh. So guys, thank you so much for coming on out of your busy schedules. We appreciate it. And I'll start with Mark, yourself. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. Talk about your passion of weather, how you got started. And Wes, I'll throw it to you, and then we'll get into tonight's topic.
Okay. Okay, well, thanks for having me first off, and I would like to point out how nice Wes's shirt looks. I can't afford shirts like that. You know, no, Wes is he's been a friend of mine for a long time, so it's a treat to get to be on here with him. You know, I'm chief meteorologist here at WIAT 42, and I've been doing this for I guess 26 years now, going on 26 years, and which means I'm old, and I got a passion for doing weather. As my dad was a pilot in the Air Force, and I grew up in a place called Prattville, Alabama, right outside of Montgomery, and we had severe weather, obviously, and big storms, and I was terrified of the storms growing up as a kid. And then as my dad and I started talking about it, he understood meteorology and started explaining what a cumulus, towering cumulus, how everything actually worked, and it started to really help me grasp more of instead of being afraid of it, being more interested in it. And at the time I was going through school, being a meteorology student was hard to do because there just weren't a lot of places that offered it. So I got involved through broadcast journalism at Troy University, and honestly took all the educational courses following getting out of school, and just getting a lot of experience in television. I've been to from Troy to Dothan to Montgomery to Birmingham to the Midwest to Quad Cities, and then back to Birmingham. So that's kind of my background, and Wes, I'll let you take over from here.
Okay. Mike working here, by the way?
Yes, we can hear you. You're good.
Oh, okay. And so I need to click the little button. I feel like I'm on a 28.8 over here. I'm seeing everything's a little staticky. But yeah, you know, I don't want to make Mark feel old here, but yeah, I've been doing this now for about 16 years. Mark, you didn't hear that. We've known each other for a long time, back when Mark was at the ABC affiliate here in town. But I was a kid growing up that when the meteorologist said there was snow in the forecast, I was a kid looking out the window waiting for the first snowflake. And I just think, going back, you know, here in Alabama, when it comes to snow, that's a whole different animal. I mean, we could really write a book on that around here. I mean, you forecast a dusting of snow around here in the grocery store aisles, the bread and milk, it is gone. But it was always exciting growing up here in Alabama, and Mark can also testify to this. You know, here we do have a variety of weather. I mean, from tropical weather, even hurricanes can have an impact this far inland. You know, you've got your winter weather seasons, and, you know, with snow being so rare in winter weather, it does make it quite exciting. And, you know, we have our fair share of severe weather. I know there's some research coming out now saying that, you know, looking back and looking at some of the new research, that we could very well be in what was always Tornado Alley. There's a lot of research and a lot of people doing studies around here that believe that this Dixie Alley corridor is probably the most tornado active region in the country. Now, I know there are others that think that the you know, Tornado Alley rotates from different parts over time. We may see it in the plains, may see it in the Midwest, but the past few years, it's certainly been it's been wild around here. But you know, I'll get into that. I do want to introduce. I'm with Fox 6 here in Birmingham, and I've been here for about 5 years now. Grew up in Tuscaloosa, and that's not too far from Prattville, where Prater Mark is from. And I went to Mississippi State. After state, I worked for 2 years for the ABC affiliate Meridian, and the University of Alabama actually has a TV station, so I was chief down there for about 7 years, and got my master's degree, did some research in weather, you know, trying to figure out tornadoes and why they are so active here across. It seems like, you know, you talk to a lot of folks around here, it's like, well, tornadoes always follow the river. They always follow terrain, and tried to tackle some of those issues while I was at Alabama, but I've been here at Birmingham. But, you know, we work amongst some great meteorologists here in this community. Mark's one of those, and we actually have meetings, even with all the stations, all the Mets come together to talk about what we can do to improve how we warn and how we prepare folks.
That's awesome. You've hit on a few things. Our professor, Mr. Joey Mosseller, he's the history buff behind it all, and he's been showing us articles of where people are talking about Tornado Alley actually rotates through different areas, and we're going to try to hit that on one of our next shows coming up in the next few months, so we might have to invite you back on for that and kind of get your perspective there in the Alabama area. And I guess for Joey and myself also, we are huge Florida Gator fans, so I just want to clarify that now in case you Alabama Roll Tide fans.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to don't throw anything at us. We're coming for you this year, though. We're coming.
Here comes the hate mail, Scotty.
I know. Here it goes. Yeah. Anyway,
let me erase my Twitter name. Hang on.
Let's talk about tornadoes instead of football. We're gonna discuss a little bit. Ricky and I will be kind of moderating the discussion, and all of us will interject with some questions throughout the show. But I've been doing a lot of research, watching you guys on YouTube and the videos that have been produced. Mark, my first question, I'm going to throw it to you, and then, Wes, you can interject as well. I watched your coverage the day before, and it was really a scary situation, honestly. seeing the STP so high the day before the event. Talk about the setup. Talk about how you guys went about it the day before the event actually happened.
Well, that's really interesting. That day was obviously getting prepped. We planned on this day 3 days in advance, and it's rare that you can see something so profound that comes together this adamantly. This was obviously something I'd never seen in all the years I'd been forecasting, so I knew the magnitude of it. But as Wes mentioned, our market is full of great meteorologists on the air, and I think the key was trying to keep everybody oriented of how significant this could be, but also not panic. And we really, I took the approach of staffing people in certain places. I strategically placed people, as you've seen the video of the tornado in Tuscaloosa. That was planned 4 days in advance, and talking with the photographer the night before, after I'd been on the air, I said, all right, so you got your spot, you know where you're going to go, we can get a good feed there. And he turned to me, he said, honestly, I'm scared to death. And I told him, I said, his name's Marlon Price. I told him, I said, Marlon, I'm scared to death too, because this is something I've never seen. And I think all of us understood how impactful that day would be. And it didn't disappoint. And what's ironic is that morning we had a squall line come through that none of us, National Weather Service, us, nobody saw coming. And that came through and wiped out about 200,000 customers from power. And not only that, it killed several people that morning. A few embedded, QLCS tornadoes, and that would have been headlines. But after that passed through, obviously things really took off. I'll let Wes share his day as well.
Yeah, it was interesting that days before that, April 15th, actually turned out to be a major event for us, and we had a double vortex tornado. Actually had a clip of that thing over Marengo County, Alabama, during April 15th. We had major damage in Tuscaloosa, and we had actually planned on doing a live big presentation in Tuscaloosa called April's Fury on that particular date. And I mean, that was a unbelievable event. I mean, we had aerials of tornado pass over Tuscaloosa, large tornadoes. In fact, that day ranks just below April 27th when you look at the history. So it was really incredible that we had that major outbreak. Of course, it didn't compare to April 27th. I mean, we're talking 60-plus tornadoes just in the state of Alabama. But it was interesting how that entire month, that pattern that we were in, Joplin happens not too long after, April 27th. But, just looking at the particular setup, a week in advance, we started to see the long-range models. And given the history of what had happened that April, we were kind of in that mindset and really ramping up as we got closer to it. Now, another thing about April is that's American Idol month for us. So we had judges shows that were going to happen, and you know how people are when it comes to programming. And I just really feel when Mark has to cut in on an Alabama football game down here. I know that's an incredibly tough decision, but we were thinking about how are we going to handle this programming-wise. So, days before we're saying, hey, there's a good chance we're looking at a major outbreak here. Looking at things, you said significant tornado parameter, EHI, helicities, just everything's pegged. It's maxed out. And we're telling management, get ready. This is something we're going to have some major damage. And I think what surprised us all, again, was that morning round of storms that moved through. So here we are. We've got 5 people on staff, and I had stayed up that night. This was I believe, Tuesday night. I'm trying to think back, and came in to support our morning met, and this line that moved out of Mississippi was almost like a derecho. I mean, it bowed out, flew across the state, produced numerous tornadoes. In hindsight, it was interesting that some folks during that event got the warnings, got up, they were doing what they were supposed to do, and they were still pulled away by the tornado, head and neck injuries, and just still didn't make it. Trying to get to safety. But that morning was devastating. We still have scars here across parts of the Birmingham area out around a place called Cahaba Heights where you can see where a tornado moved through. So a lot of folks, our job on that Saturday, what was very tricky for us is we had to convince folks that, hey, that wasn't the main event. And we got, as Mark mentioned, 200,000 people without power, so people don't have a clue. And we even had that morning, we had damage that prevented folks from even receiving cell phone service. So it was a very tricky day. So I never will forget, the Tuscaloosa newspaper called me that day, and they said, so the main event was this morning, but we're hearing that more storms are on the way. And I'll tell you this, at 1 o'clock, we didn't have a single cloud in the sky. I mean, it was blue sky all around. And, man, when that cap broke in the afternoon, it was just, as you know, supercell after supercell. And I think that was one of the tricky parts. I had one guy, he said, you know what, I was actually cleaning up from the morning damage on April 27th and had no clue that an EF4 tornado went through downtown Tuscaloosa. Now, this guy is in the south part of the same county and had no clue. That's how cut off some people were from the world on that particular day. Kind of a nightmare situation.
Yeah, definitely. And Mark, I was watching your coverage there on CBS. One of your meteorologists, they were talking about the sunshine is just going to be like a powder keg, and it went from just a blip on the radar of a light shower into a huge supercell in no time. Talk about this. I was watching your coverage, and Wes, I want you to interject as well. You were talking about let's treat every storm as if it was on the ground. I mean, the situation was that volatile. That's hard for us to fathom, especially outside of the Midwest with the technical tornado alley. You know, I think that was great advice what you told the people who are watching you.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, and you know, Wes, who is a great meteorologist, he knows this stuff, especially when it comes to severe weather. He had a great teacher. And well, okay, all right, maybe I wasn't that great, but no. In all seriousness, we were, you know, our market is, I think, probably the hardest. I think it's probably the most important for severe weather in the country. And of course, I'm biased, but we get everything. And as Wes was talking about, whether it's snow, we get hurricanes, we get tornadoes, we get super outbreaks, you name it. That day, obviously, when we look at where everything had gone overnight, I had gone home to get some sleep, and my morning meteorologist, she was new to severe weather, and so was Ted McInerney, my other Met. And when she called me, I had just gotten to sleep because I knew we had a long day ahead. She goes, well, I got a couple of tornado warnings in East Mississippi. And I thought it was a joke. I said, look, I'm trying to sleep. And make a long story short, I jumped in the car, came up to work, and we dealt with that line when it came through. And you know, it was extensive, but this thing was flying through. Wes, I think at some points it was doing 80 miles per hour, if I remember correctly. I mean, it was just the fastest I've ever seen a squall line come through. And I tried to go home. And unfortunately, my route at the time was through Cahaba Heights, that, you know, was where one of the tornadoes went through. And after an hour and a half, I finally got home. Went in, showered, changed, got a new set of suit stuff, and I came out and looked up, and the sky was crystal clear. It was blue. And this is, you know, something I've shared with a lot of people, but my nerves were so bad about what was about to happen. I literally got sick in my driveway next to my car because I knew that was the last ingredient for a super outbreak. And of course, then I couldn't get back to work fast enough. But all of our major arteries were shut down. We had power out everywhere, and I finally did get up here. And that was the toughest part, was trying to emphasize to everyone, look, that was round one. And normally when you get a system to come through, it rakes over the atmosphere and just eats up the energy. But when that sun came out, I called our entire station news team together and had the conference call and said, look, guys, this is nowhere close to being done. And when it goes, it's going to be explosive. And I think we could have had every station that day cover a different quadrant of our viewing area, and we'd have all been busy. It didn't matter. I think that would have been something that would have been more beneficial. But without the power, it really made it tough.
And Wes, with you guys, I mean, your approach as the storms are starting to break out there at Fox 6.
Yeah, well, we had a camera on top of the PNC Bank building in downtown Tuscaloosa, and we had a storm tracker out west of town, and he was reporting to us that we had a lowering base. And granted, by this point, I mean, we've already covered tornadoes in Coleman. What was amazing is every storm where we had a tornado warning, you put a camera on it, you see a tornado. It was just incredible. That day, of course, the Tuscaloosa one got all the attention that ended up moving through Birmingham. We've got a storm tracker west of Tuscaloosa, started seeing the rotation. That's some of the video you saw from Mark there. They were positioned to watch it track across town. We were looking at it from the north end in downtown Tuscaloosa, and as it crossed through, and it we're sitting there naming off locations. We were using Viper at Fox 6, and we were tracking it using the shear skit, and I was really impressed about how well it handled the actual placement of the tornado and with respect to the mapping. There was very good geometric, planimetric positioning with the radar data, and I think that's one thing we need to caution folks about with apps and things like that in the future, is being very careful, especially chasers getting themselves in some situations out there. But did a very good job. We watched it as it moved through downtown, and then we lost power. We lost the camera. We had a lot of video from that point, and we were just getting reports from there. This thing stayed on the ground from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham, and we're hearing the reports, watching it on radar. And then when this thing got about halfway between Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, we start hearing stuff hitting the roof of our station here on Red Mountain. If you're in Birmingham, just south of town, that's where Mark's station's located. We're located right there along Red Mountain. We got pieces of insulation falling. So we got a camera on top of our tower here, and we pivoted that thing off to the west. And at one point, I mean, it looked like this thing, just looking at it on camera, was going to make a beeline right for downtown Birmingham. And just by the grace of God, this thing moved a little bit further northward, which still, it hit a very highly populated area and hit around Pratt City, and that's when we had major damage. And what was amazing to me is that you look at Interstate 65, which runs north, south, south, north through downtown Birmingham, you can see people just driving towards the tornado. We're looking at it on TV, and I mean, it's just a steady flow of traffic. I'm like, are you listening to the radio, people? And we're sitting there on television holding up pieces of wood with nails hanging out of it, saying, you see this? This is falling from the sky right now. Just incredible. And we still hear stories, and I know Mark's heard stories around here from people that found receipts and things like that. We have people, I talked to a guy actually 2 weeks ago just north of Birmingham, said there's a backpack hanging in the top of an oak tree, and who knows where it's from, Tuscaloosa or west part of Birmingham. But, I mean, all this is happening. It's surreal. And I know Mark's family's here. I have family down in Tuscaloosa. So, we're on the air, and we're texting our families, and trying to, and everything's happening so fast. It's like when it's all over with, you look back and say, wow.
And that's a great point, because my family who lives in northern Shelby County, they didn't get a drop of rain. I mean, we had massive, violent wedge tornadoes just shredding parts of our viewing area, and then there were other parts that didn't even get a drop of rain, and they still had some sun. So that was the kind of day it was, and I think surreal is a perfect word that Wes was talking about, because that tornado, as it moved into Tuscaloosa, there's still a debate between the MIC at the National Weather Service and I. When we go fishing, we argue about this all the time. But he points out, he says, that tornado was on the ground when it was arriving in Tuscaloosa. And I told him I had the genesis of it. I mean, I watched the development of it from, the get-go. So I think it was just a redeveloping tornado. But obviously, and just real quick, I know you have a question here, but that tornado, when I saw it develop, we lost our signal and went back to the radar. And Wes is so right on this. If anything you learn about looking at a radar image, you have to understand in a major hook that tornado could be anywhere along that line. Now, granted, our radars are fantastic, but this EF4, unfortunately, was just so big. Once we saw the video of it, I got away from radar. I just started naming off crossroads, University Boulevard and McFarland. And unfortunately, with someone who was relying on radar, it was tough to try to pin down where it was going to go. And there were places that a particular individual was naming off, and it was 3 to 5 miles off. So it wasn't that they did it intentionally. It was just the fact that that's being in the trenches with this stuff, and you have to really understand that tornado could be anywhere in that hook. And I got to the point where, in 23 years of being on television, that was the first time I ever got emotional and choked up when I saw the tornado, knew where it was going, and it was headed right towards the university. And there are kids there that grew up with my son, and I can't tell you how helpless that feeling is. Going, here it comes. It's like walking out in the street and you see a truck coming at full speed and you can't get there in time. That's the feeling it was to me. And I got emotional. I got choked up, and I said, all right, I'm regrouping. I've got to get through this. And to try to explain what you feel that day, you really can't. And as Wes said, when we started getting debris, the tornado wasn't even in Jefferson County yet. And we had styrofoam, we had insulation, we had roof shingles, and I showed it on the air as well as they were, and we were all going, look, please understand, this is how serious it really is.
You guys hit several questions that I have, and I know Joey has one as well. Two of them I want to kind of hit on since they're kind of fresh in our memory, and then I'll get to Joey. You were talking about, first of all, the debris that was falling. I mean, Wes, I remember looking at the video of your chief going out and actually coming in with a piece of wood with nails all over it. And Mark, I seen your video where you're holding, I'm not sure what it was, but it's like a block of something, and that tornado was several miles away from you guys.
Several.
Yeah, it was a lot further than several. It was almost a county over.
Wow. So talk about that. I know you guys were talking about the street views and stuff like that. How essential was it to put those street pinpoints in your forecast to help those people in the path of the storm?
Wes, I'll let you go. That.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it was very critical. I mean, we were trying to do our best. It got to a point where there were so many tornadoes happening at one point, we had to look at the most populated areas, and we're like, folks, at the same time the Tuscaloosa tornado is moving between Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, we're talking an EF4 here. We've got another EF4 that's about 20 miles to the south, moving through Hale and Bibb counties in our coverage area. And it was moving through a very open rural population area, so we were just really focusing in on this tornado is moving towards Birmingham. We check in from time to time, but we would really get in there tight. We did some micro tracks with Viper, getting in there on some of the streets and into the downtown Birmingham area, but it's like Mark said, and there comes a point in time, and this goes for severe weather tracking, it goes with forecasting too. You can look at models before a severe weather event. We had one this past weekend, and you just finally have to look out the window and say, hey, this isn't happening, And with severe weather on this particular day, when we're seeing these tornadoes, it was like, let's take radar over here, let's blow up this picture of the tornado because we can look at it, look at the town, and know where it's at, and we were just really tracking based off of what we were seeing. And that was big that day. I mean, at one point, I think totally for us, and I don't know about how many Mark's team was able to capture, but just the television station alone, I know for a fact we had like 3 just caught on camera, which was just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I've chased out in the Great Plains for 2 weeks, and I saw one tornado the last week, the last day, and there wasn't much to it. So it's just really, you look back on it and doing things like this and thinking about it, it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, we had so many tornadoes, it was hard to keep up with, and that's why I go back to that comment, that Wes and his team could have had a quadrant, and we could have had a quadrant, and still not been able to keep up. It's just one of those things you have to experience. I can't tell people what that outbreak is really like. You just had to go through it, and when we actually had 4 different tornadoes on TV that day, and I think that with the I had a storm chaser who was actually in Walker County, and they're screaming in my ear, he's got a tornado, and this is going through a place called Cordova, and this is before the Tuscaloosa tornado, And I said, well, let's take the shot. And I looked, and he had a shot off of his camera on his truck, and you could see across the interstate. And there was a huge wedge of the entire thunderstorm. Half of it was the tornado, and it was an EF4. And I said, now we're really getting into it. And then once we went to Tuscaloosa, by the time it got to Birmingham, I was thinking the same thing Wes was. I'm afraid, all right, I got to get my personnel out of here. I got to make sure people are in the hallway here. We got to be smart here. But that tornado was so large, you couldn't even see the whole thing on our video cameras because it covered the entire horizon.
Yeah, you guys mentioned this a second ago. Kind of back up for a second. You mentioned the radar and how the spot, looking at the radar, and sometimes the tornado wasn't in the exact spot that the radar was showing. And James Spann's been on our show before, and he's a good friend of all of us on the panel here. So I think he has a problem with me mentioning that he had a problem that day with his radar putting the tornado in a position where the tornado actually wasn't, and it ended up leading to the death of I think it was an Alabama student or something to that effect, a young person. But anyway, just talk about how you guys had to abandon that and go to live camera. Exactly how did that work? I mean, around here in the Carolinas, we don't see tornadoes clear enough to do something like that at all anyway. But I'm just kind of curious on kind of how that went and what made you decide to abandon the radar and go to that.
Well, and I think that as Wes and I both were talking about, you can have a radar, but when you've got a live picture of it, I mean, you don't need the radar. You can show everybody who's familiar with that area where it is, where it's moving, and what it's doing. I think that was the best move, is to go straight to the video and stay with that, because I think that sometimes when we're relying on radar, even as meteorologists, we have a tendency to forget that beam is still going up, and we may not necessarily see the base of the storm, and that can be a tilt. And this particular tornado had a tilt to it, and I think that's where the radar situation became an issue. But as Wes was talking about, the cameras that they were using on the north side of the town, they lost power, and I had a guy doing a live shot. He was actually sat shooting it back here, so we still had power, and that's why we were able to keep it so long. And traditionally, it's hard to see tornadoes in Alabama as well, unless you have a big open field. But I sent him to a place called Woods and Water. It's on the hill, the highest point in Tuscaloosa, and I said, you can get a shot of the whole city. You might get something, but you've got a place you can go. If a tornado develops and comes towards you, you can go to a place of safety. So that was why we had such remarkable video. And I tell you, the guy who shot it, I still think that's some of the most incredible video in the history of television. And from every angle, that tornado was so incredibly violent. That's all I could keep saying is, this is a violent tornado. This is something you see out in the Midwest, and just blown away. And I've covered tornadoes, and the tornado, this one in particular, went from Tuscaloosa into Jefferson County, went through Pratt City, which ironically in 1998 was wiped out by an EF5. And it was so powerful that when Dr. Fujita came down here, he said, this is the closest I've ever come to having an F6. So I can't tell you why it goes in that area, but both of those tornadoes, as massive as they were, both disintegrated right there. And I don't know if it has anything to do with terrain. That's always going to be the discussion. But that particular storm redeveloped a new EF4 tornado. And we're so caught up by all the damage and news going on. Unfortunately, it's easy to get pulled in that direction now. Okay, we've got ambulances going and news is going. We've got to have the shot. But unfortunately, we had large tornadoes still on the ground in East Alabama.
Mark? Sorry, Wes, go ahead.
Wes?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Wes.
Oh, okay. I was just going to follow up. Mark had that. They had the great image of the tornado. When it moved through, we lost power, but we're using Baron Viper, and it did a very good job. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was spot on. It had it The skit had the tornado moving across 15th Street north of University Mall. We were very impressed, which the Weather Service did a great job that day. They were giving excellent warning times. You know, tornadoes here in Alabama typically move faster than ones out over the plains, and they did a real good job that day getting those warnings ahead of the storms, which you could see the things, you know, without radar. But that tornado, as Mark mentioned, what's interesting is that this same tornado reformed over East Alabama, and it ended up moving through a community known as Goshen over in far eastern Alabama, the same community that was hit during the Palm Sunday tornado back in the 90s. And I went to the Goshen community, and there was a lady there, and the only thing left on this house was the hallway and a little closet. And she said she got in there with her daughter, and her daughter had lost her husband during the Palm Sunday tornado. But this thing went through the same area that destroyed a church over there with folks inside of it. It's just amazing how these things stay on kind of a similar path, you know, and it always seems to be the same counties. You know, it's like Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, then these things kind of weaken, and then they reform into East Alabama.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the location of the low pressure. But where Wes and I are, our stations are lined up on top of a mountain that's 800 feet high. So could that have anything to do with the inflow to it? Sure. But once it got into North and East Alabama, it was still just as big, and their terrain is a little bit higher as well. So, and I think that's just part of the mystique of severe weather and tornadoes is, you know, there's really no rhyme or reason other than, you know, what we know now. But why does it always hit Tuscaloosa? Or why is it always West Jefferson County? I don't know. I mean, there's always going to be that question, I think.
Just a little weather historian part of me. Wes mentioned the Palm Sunday outbreak in Goshen. There was 2 Palm Sunday outbreaks, both of which had a tornado hit Goshen, Alabama. The other one was Goshen, Indiana.
Wow.
Yeah, just for note, you was talking about the one that hit Goshen, Alabama.
Yes. Very.
Well, Wes's coverage goes a long way, so.
Yeah. I mean, this hangout, man, this is worldwide here.
We did have a viewer from Russia one night that commented on our Q&A.
I know Ricky's wanting to get to talk specifically about the University of Alabama. Before we do that, before I lose track of it, and Mark had hinted at it just a little bit ago about his nerves before the event took place. Both of you guys, I watched your coverage. Y'all remain so calm on there when this big old beast is coming through your viewing area. Talk about what was you thinking? What was you thinking as you're talking to your viewing audience? But you know, outside of you, there's monster tornadoes just going through, and your family may be involved or friends. I mean, what's running through your head? What's the thought process as you're seeing this disaster just take place in front of you?
I don't know if I could really describe it, Wes. I'll let you start with that because you were looking at the same thing.
Yeah, it's so tough to try to put into words. I mean, it's almost like I say when you kind of get cut. And you really don't feel the pain until about 2 minutes after, and you realize, ow, look what happened. You know, it's so fast, so much happening at once. You know, we're in the studios. You know, we're taking so much in, so many scenes coming in from the news departments, and you know, Mark, I don't know if you guys had this challenge, but I'm sure you did. You know, we've got so many stories coming in from damage. You know, news is trying to do their thing, but we're saying, hey, we still have tornadoes out there doing damage, you know, and we have families that are in trouble. My brother-in-law is from Pittsburgh, and he's never been in a tornado, and he was a student at the university at the time, and he's out there, you know, with his camera filming, and, you know, I'm just sitting here, I want to say on air, you know, just yell out at him, you know, are you crazy? You know, go somewhere safe. And you see what was troubling so many students at the university posting on YouTube, I think I see the tornado, I think that I see the tornado, and you know, when you look at things like that, I see so many stories about what went wrong that day, what we could have done better, and apparently the message of the danger of these things just really isn't hitting home with some folks. Because, Mark, I know you probably saw some of these pictures that were out there. I mean, right in the middle of this tornado, debris whipping around in the air.
Yeah, when you look at what is posted on YouTube, and I think so many people take such risk because they want that excitement. I mean, there's a passion there. I had a passion for tornadoes, and since April 27th, 2011, I'm not afraid to say if I never have to cover another tornado warning again, I'll be fine. I absolutely do not ever want to have to go through something like that again. I know it will happen, and I don't have any doubt that we're going to have more tornadoes, and we've been very fortunate since then. I think we've lost just 1 or 2 people in our viewing area with tornadoes. It's just been so quiet, and I love that. But it will come back. We will have tornadoes again, and I think for the younger guys who are interested in storm chasing and all, is realize it's real. I mean, when it happens, it's real, and you've got to understand that. And I think that's probably what was going through my mind is, this is really happening. And I've had people who were from North Dakota said they had children at the University of Alabama that were watching me online, and friends of mine whose son was there, they were on their knees screaming at the TV and crying because I'm showing a tornado headed towards their kid. We could spend 10 hours just telling stories of what Wes and I have learned and heard and seen, and without playing beat the gore of how tragic it was. That was unfortunately there are people who try to take credit as the only person on television that day, and I think that's just disingenuous to claim that 250 people died on their watch. It's embarrassing for somebody to say that, because all of us were trying to do the best we could, and it was a team effort with all the stations. Then I don't think we were competing. I think we were all just trying to survive, and I think all of us were trying to do the best job we could in treating every one of our viewers as our family, because this was bad. We knew it was bad, but to watch it unfold in front of you, what's going on inside, you can't describe. It's like, to me, it's like watching a child run in a street. You can't get there in time.
Mark, you hit on something there. I've chased. We've all done it. Got excited about storms. Been out there, but when you're actually on one of those scenes, and you guys may have been there. But April 27th, I had a family member tell me, they came out of their safe place, went outside, and then there's total devastation. And all you hear is people screaming. You smell the smell of natural gas in the air. You hear sirens, people screaming, "Help me!" It just like a bomb just went off. And I just can't imagine being in that situation. Finding, well, we won't go there, but finding bodies and things like that, just a nightmare situation. And as you know, there was the Alabama player that was killed in the event. I mean, just so many people impacted, students impacted, just terrible.
And I think that Wes and I both have probably heard from people who said, we were watching you, and you get that a lot in television. Well, we were watching the coverage, and Mark, you were great on Channel 6. How people can get them all mixed up.
Yeah, Mark Wyatt.
Trying to explain to people how bad it can really be is tough. And I went to a number of the locations, and I finally had to stop going because the smell is something you never get rid of. The churned soil up. I didn't go to Hackleburg, which is just on the fringe of our viewing area, but seeing that and realizing and having people tell you, well, I know so-and-so, my nephew or my mother was watching you, and they ended up dying. You don't shake that. That's tough to get rid of, because when I started this in 1989, if you'd have told me I'm going to be the last human being that this individual ever hears speaking to them before they die, that would have freaked me out. That would have really messed with my head, and I've had to battle it and had reoccurring nightmares that I couldn't get to the studio in time. So it had a huge impact inside, even though we were calm. It was my job to be a professional. It was not my job to be emotional. And even though I fought that back a couple of times, I think in West it's the same way. I mean, we all realize we have a job to do, and there's still a lot of people who could be hurt.
Definitely, and I loved your comment. I actually wrote it down and just commend you for it. You would say every once in a while, "Hang on, we are going to get through this together." And that at the moment, I know it seems scary, but hopefully that puts some kind of relief in people's minds that you guys would get through it. And I know there was deaths, but there were a lot of good stories that come out from it as well. So.
Yeah, and that was something that that's where you start to feel like you're there with your viewers and that community. Is just like, hey, hang in there. I'm going to do all I can, but I'm right here with you. That's all I could think of is how can I make somebody who's probably about to die, which I thought might have been over 100 or 200 people, as big as I was. But I'm thinking, what can I say to these people? I'm terrified. I'm stunned, and I'm thinking, you know what? I want them to feel comforted. And I've had a number of occasions where people have come up and said, yeah, we had a family member who died, but they were watching you, whether it was there or in Pratt City. But I do want these the younger guys who do storm chase to realize when you come up on these scenes, these are not, it's not just what you see pictures of. It can be very violent, and it can be very difficult to not only stomach, but you can't unsee some of these things. And we had a storm chaser that came up and had came up on a woman that had a railing from a fence that had impaled her, and unfortunately she was still alive. And he ran to her, and there was nothing you can do, and that bothered. I think that really did mess with him for a while. So just know that when you take that excitement and that passion, which we've got to have good, smart storm chasers out there. Realize that when you see it for real and it's not in a movie, your heart is totally different. When you're in a movie, you can brush it off, but when you're out there and it's real and that person is screaming and begging for your help and they're dying in front of you, it's not that easy. You got to be prepared for that.
Mark, I'm just going to jump in here for a second because I can't thank you enough probably for saying things like that, because we see everyone on Twitter, even like tonight, people being so excited or even wanting storms or wanting tornadoes to happen, and like you said, they don't understand a lot of times the damage and the risks, and the risk to them, but even sometimes the risk to other people that they put themselves in, or the things you're going to see. We chased a tornado, well, more like the tornado came towards us in Hampton. We live on a peninsula, and my hometown was actually hit by one. It was kind of odd. You had that feeling the day before something was going to happen. But we sat there and watched it come ashore and then went into downtown afterwards. And there were people, it was an EF1 tornado, nothing too serious like you guys had in Alabama, but still caused a lot of damage. And there was a Blackbeard Festival going on, which was an outside festival in downtown Hampton with a lot of drunk pirates, which is a totally different story in itself. But, just to see how many people were outside and could have been impacted if it was a much stronger tornado was an eye-opening experience. And so I just can't thank you enough for saying that, and hopefully that gets drilled into a lot of young chasers' minds.
Hey, look, I was just as excited about tornadoes starting out too. I mean, and it's just the fascination with them. They're just, if they're out on an open plain, they're almost beautiful. They're just majestic, and that's something that I think has always been an interest. And now with today's technology, everybody wants to be the one who posts the video of the tornado that's getting close, and it's not worth it. It's really not. I mean, calling that in is just as important as getting the video of it and letting the National Weather Service know, or letting the station know that this is happening. If you're at a safe place, great. But I train our entire staff here. I open up to our salespeople, our traffic people, all of our news staff. It's mandatory that you go through this storm, not a chasing, but storm tracking training system that our program that I put together with the other meteorologists, so they understand what a wall cloud is, where to be in a particular position so you're not going to be in the direct path, or what inflow looks like, and debris, and what to look for down power lines. So I train everybody here a couple of times a year so they are aware of it, and tell them, the excitement's over with when you come up on an unfortunate victim who may not have survived.
Yeah, we experienced a EF2, high-end EF2, almost EF3 here a couple of years ago, and just seeing the turmoil from that, it went through a mobile home park, and you guys know it doesn't take much wind for those to cause devastation there, and just seeing the lives that are just touched forever, destruction and injuries and stuff like that. You may be excited at the moment seeing the tornado, but seeing the aftermath is definitely something totally that you'll never it'll never leave your mind. Seeing some of the scenes that you see through those. So.
Yeah, the whole idea of being on TV, I think Wes will attest to this too, is while it's fun, and I can't believe I get paid to do this, it does become a job. And, the fascination is really what gets you into it. But then, there's a lot that you don't have to deal with weather-wise. And traditionally, most of our tornadoes are usually EF zeros, 1s, 2s, sometimes 3s. But that day was just something special. And Wes, I'll just let you talk. I've been talking a lot here.
Oh, no. I mean, yeah, EF1s, EF2s, we have so many of those, no doubt about it. EF4s, EF5s, I think back to the one back before the enhanced Fujita scale, the F4 that moved through Tuscaloosa in 2000 in December.
Yep.
You know that one all too well. That hit.
I think that was probably the first tornado ever put on live TV, because I was working with Span then, and we put it on, and we were just like stunned that we had a live tornado coming towards the camera.
Yeah, I mean, and that hit where I went to high school, where I grew up, kind of my community. And when you go like into an area where you grew up that just got hit, and you see your friends and you see people you grew up with, I never will forget. There's a neighborhood called Hinton Place, and we went out there, and this lady was holding a big German Shepherd. And I mean, water shooting straight up in the air, leveled homes, I mean, busted lines. This thing just moved through. And she's out there, face covered in blood, and she's holding this big German Shepherd, and she says, "Sir, please get away. He thinks you're trying to hurt me." And here I am, a junior woodchuck meteorologist, with a handheld camera out there trying to get video for my chief back at WJRD. And that day was there's another tornado for you. That was a December tornado. But I do want to say here, and I've actually got to wrap up here very soon because we have a 9 o'clock coming up. But UAB did a study here after April 27th on most of the fatalities here in Jefferson County, and they found that most of the fatalities were the result of head and neck related injuries. So we've had a major campaign going on here in Jefferson County to promote helmet safety during tornadoes, and we're seeing that message being spread now across the state. And there are even some other counties that have gotten on board here in Alabama talking about people that had head and neck related injuries. We're seeing that hey, a lot of folks had head and neck related injuries during these tornadoes. So there's something to keep in mind. Something we're really pushing here in Alabama with respect to tornado safety.
Yeah, especially with kids, because that's something I've been saying on television for probably 15 years. And I'll be honest, I stole it from Dan Satterfield. I saw him talk about it once, and I'm like, what a brilliant idea. I mean, get that head, that noggin protected. And I was mentioning that on the air, and had a kid put a helmet on, and his mom and dad were taking pictures and video going, oh, he's got his baseball helmet on. They took a direct hit, and that helmet saved his life. So it does make a difference. I mean, there's no question. But yeah, that effort is something all of us are doing. But Wes is right. I mean, that is something, and having people go to a safe place with their shoes. I mean, you learn little things like this that you don't think about it. But if you're going to your basement or your storm shelter, take shoes, because so many people didn't have shoes, they were blown off or whatever it is, and they can't walk around and even get out of the damage.
It'll make both you guys feel good. When me and Scotty do all of our school programs, we really hit hard on kids getting a helmet on your head. And you'd be amazed. We ask the kids every time, who here has a helmet at their house? And 90% of them raise their hand. They have some kind of helmet. It's just a matter of knowing to put it on.
Helmets and goggles. That's what you need those. So, Wes, I know you have to leave. We're going to briefly touch on the University of Alabama. So if you need to leave anytime, you're more than welcome to, or hopefully we'll close up here in just a little bit.
I can hang in there for just a few moments longer. Unfortunately, we don't have that CBS programming where we get a little extra time, over here. It's 9 o'clock. So I think they're still singing on Idol, so I have a little while.
All right, I just wanted to hit real quick on the University of Alabama, and kind of just how people, and especially the families learned about, if their kids were okay. Because I've never heard this story, and I've never heard of, how the information was spread afterwards. So either one of you who wants to hit that, please do.
Go ahead, Wes.
Well, yeah, we have a lot of families here in the Birmingham area. You know, University of Alabama is a little different than like Mississippi State or some of these like Ole Miss. You've got a lot of University of Alabama students that are from near Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, not too far away. So a lot of those families, were getting the message. I was really shocked about how families out of town were getting the message via the digital platform. We had a guy, I actually did a story, it never aired, on the April 15th event. He was stationed in Afghanistan, and he called his mom in Tuscaloosa to let her know there was a tornado warning in Tuscaloosa from Afghanistan, just from seeing the coverage on the internet. It was really surprising, and I had family in South Florida that called and said, hey, we see what's happening in Tuscaloosa. So, there's kind of a saying these days that news finds you, and I think for a lot of folks, people were weather aware. We were hitting it hard days in advance, and I think people understood the language around here. This wasn't the normal language. When we start talking about there will be injuries, there will be major destruction, without a doubt. When we start talking like that, that's kind of taking it to the next level.
I think that unfortunately, there is sometimes a panic can be created, and the excitement can grow, and that's been something that's been happening in our market for a while. And I think as Wes and I are both, we're much more conservative of how we approach it, and as the JP Dice, who works with him as well. We take the approach of let's not panic people, because there are a number of people who are terrified of storms. It's just that the number is very high, and you don't do much good when you start to panic and it starts snowballing. If you're very direct, if you get to a point of saying, look, I want to emphasize this. It's not very often that I'm going to say we're going to have a loss of life, extensive damage. This could be that bad. If it's not, I'll take the blame, and I'll be glad to eat crow on this. But that's why I reserve that and save it for those opportunities that would really have an impact. Because when you're getting everybody excited and ramped up every time, well, that starts to really, in our society, that becomes a cry wolf syndrome. And we've seen that in this market, and I think that happened. And now that we haven't had severe weather in a while, it concerns me that people are getting that false sense of security that, we don't have big tornadoes anymore. They will happen again.
Sorry. Got a lot of lights going on here. Hey, guys, I'm sorry to do this. I'm going to have to break away, but this has been this has been very interesting, and maybe we could do this again sometime.
Yeah, we'd definitely love to have you on, and thank you so much for opening up and telling your side of what you experienced. I know it's a difficult time for everyone, so we appreciate your thoughts and comments.
Thanks a lot, and Mark, I'll send one of these shirts your way.
No, just buy me lunch. You owe me lunch, don't you?
Yeah, we need to do that.
Take
Okay,
care, buddy. Thanks
a lot, everybody. If I can ever help you guys out with any weather questions, my email is www.yatt@wbrc.com, and I'm sure Scotty can hook you up with my contact info. But and Mark, we'll help you guys out any way we can.
Same here, brother. Thanks so much, and it's good talking to you again.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Wes. We appreciate it. And Mark, we're talking a little bit about a University of Alabama. What was the communication like the days up? I mean, that's a huge entity in your area. I mean, did you guys have open communications with the threats coming in, or did they kind of just do their own little thing?
Yeah, I think that, and especially after that we've seen the university and a number of facilities take action and come up with a plan. I don't know that I never really had any direct communication with the university. I don't know of any station that did. I think that they were just very weather aware. They were on top of their game and made sure that that the students were at least informed out early, and I think that helped. But one of the things that really scares me about what has become a rash of this is the right thing to do is our school systems are shutting down and sending kids home early. And part of the problem with that is those kids aren't going home to watch severe weather coverage. They're not going to have an app on their phone that they're paying attention to. They're going to be playing games. They're going to be watching Nickelodeon or Disney or whatever it may be. And I think that we send a lot of kids home unsupervised that may not get the warning when they need it. So, but for universities, I can see that. These are adults. These are people who know what to do. But it's become a rash, and it's a little disturbing to me. But I know it's a liability issue because the schools don't want to get sued.
And they're also probably sending a lot of those kids home to a much less dirty shelter than that school building was.
Exactly. And we've got a number of people outside of our area that it's just not a real wealthy area, and people who live in older homes or mobile homes. These kids don't have anywhere to go, and just even a straight line wind event could kill them.
Yeah, you're right about that. When we're talking about our school system, our schools here in North Carolina, they're not even prepared for that. So it's going to take a lot of cooperation between the Weather Service and media outlets and the Weather Enterprise to kind of come up with a plan, because we're still releasing school. When there's severe weather happening, we're not delaying schools. We had a tornado warning last year, and they were releasing school as the tornado warning was in effect and not keeping the kids in the school building. So we still have a lot to do on that side of the aspect here in the Carolinas.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because what happened in Enterprise, Alabama, when which is rare to get an EF4 tornado there. But I mean, they lost several students, and they stayed at school. So that's where the liability comes in. Can our counties afford that? Or what's the poorest school systems in the country here in Alabama. So that's unfortunately, poverty is a bigger deal in a lot of spots around our state than people think.
I believe Kit has a question with one of the tornadoes that went through down there.
Sure.
Yeah, it's more just about tornado development. I've got that video of the tornado that went through Tuscaloosa, and I think I'm sharing the video right now, but one of the most powerful storms I've ever seen is from this video, and just really the tilt of it is just incredible to me. Is that any more intense or dangerous when it's tilted as much as it is right here, or is it just a different type of storm?
I think it just comes down to just being a different type of storm. The wind speeds is really, that's what it's all about. And as you see there, the tilt, that's what I was trying to explain earlier is, when you're counting on a radar, that storm was tilted, and there was a lot of energy and a lot of momentum with this, and a higher beam can confuse a meteorologist. And unfortunately, they didn't have the live video that I did, which allowed me to get within 100 yards of where it crossed. And that's something you have to really understand is anywhere along that hook, that tornado could have developed. And there are times you can see right where it is. Now with the new dual pole, we can see so much. It's incredible. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out. But that day in particular, that hook was so defined. But where that area looked like it should have been the tornado, that's not where it was. It was actually in a different part of the hook, and that's why it was missed, and it was confused. And I think that we were all trying to do the best we could. We were trying to save lives. We're all in shock because of what we're looking at. Most of our tornadoes are rain-wrapped because we're in such a very tropical environment. You just don't get to see all of our tornadoes. And the week before, on the 15th, which Wes had mentioned, most of our tornadoes were rain-wrapped, and we had damage, but most people didn't see them. That was blowing our minds when we saw that, and from all these different angles, I mean, it got real fast.
All right, guys. So we're closing in. We're past the 9 o'clock hour Eastern Standard Time, 8 Central Standard Time. So I know Mark's got to get back and get his TV duties done. I'm going to open it up to the panelists if they have any more questions before we kind of wrap up.
I'm good. I just, once again, I love all the stories that are always told from this outbreak, because I don't think there's ever enough time, as you mentioned, Mark, to get through all of them. There's stories from everyone, no matter where you were or what happened to you, whether you're in Alabama or not that day.
Yeah, and my sister and brother-in-law, Prattville's about an hour from Birmingham. They came up with our church that I grew up in to do some help. Helping people, just trying to get their stuff together. And they had no idea that my sister was related to me. And they were just discussing how they were watching the coverage and how the husband was running down the stairs behind his wife, and the suction was so bad from that tornado that it literally started to lift him up and try to pull him back out. And they were telling this whole story, and she said, well, my brother was on TV, and they're like, we were watching him. So I keep thinking maybe I need to write a book about it. But it's hard to really, honestly, I don't watch the video of me doing the coverage. It's just, it puts a pit in your stomach, and it's a tragic thing, and I hate to say that it affects me like that, because I was standing in a TV studio, but these are people that I know. These are people that I go see and talk to and trust me, and I know they're watching, and it's very difficult. And I'm a very conservative type of person, but with the reoccurring nightmare that I was having with this, it just got to the point where it was really affecting me, and I ended up going and getting a tattoo of the date, just to see if that made a difference, which it did, ironically. And so in memoriam of those people, they all died on all of our watches. And I don't want to take any claim or credit for it, but it certainly did help me to feel like I've connected with those people in my heart, and I don't forget. That's the most important thing, is we not forget any of those people, because there were children, there were elderly, there were husbands, wives, daughters, kids, and I think it would be an injustice to forget those people who we lost that day.
Mark, there's you're speaking about writing a book. In case you probably don't know, my wife is actually an author, so I pay attention to a lot of books. But there's been a few books that have been written. One that just came out recently about this event. But I can't recall a book that's been written from your side of the story. From being inside the studio and the way that went. I'm just telling you, I'd be first in line to read it if you decide to write one.
Well, I appreciate that. I've thought about it, and there's so much to tell, and I just really I've always put it off as, well, I don't want to relive that. I want to move on. I want to get my life past all that event, and I don't want to really look like I'm ever glorifying it, because there are so many people that lost so much, and that has always worried me, that, well, if I'm writing it, it looks like I'm going, well, hey, look what I did, and I was on TV and I put it on TV. That's always worried me, because I want my viewers to realize I'm like them. I'm just lucky enough to be able to do something that I love and that I have a passion for, and I stand in front of a box, in front of a green wall, and talk to people. I tell them the weather. I'm nobody important. I'm nobody special. I'm just like the guy right down the street who's down there working at the Chevron station. So, look, I think there's some really interesting stories that need to be told. I just don't know if I would be the right person to tell it, because that was a tough day. And I've always thought what would be great is the first responders, because there were so many volunteers that did so much but I think you could have a book this thick to tell all the stories of that day.
There's an amazing I can't remember the name of the TV show, but it was it was kind of like Rescue 911, or it was like Cops for EMT. The people were riding along. They happened to be riding along the day of the big Bridge Creek Moore tornado in '99. And if you look it up, it's on YouTube. It's when you see what those guys went through. There was a guy on there that had an entire gymnasium full of injured people, and he was the only paramedic there.
Crazy. And that's the thing, is there's so many people that did amazing things, and I don't know. I think that those are the stories that would really be fascinating, but unfortunately, that's when you start to get into, well, I found this body, or I found this portion of a body, and I do have one story that I'll tell you guys before we wrap up here in a minute. But I don't know. Maybe I do need to write something. I think that from this perspective, it would be different, and I don't know. Maybe it's something I'll consider after I've had a little bit of time to kind of recollect on it. But every time that Discovery Channel or anything that comes on when I see that, I can't tell you all the different channels I've been on and all the different shows. But every time it's on or I pop up, I get up and leave the room. And my wife and kids now understand that I don't want to watch.
I think a book with the exact perspective that you just said about how you're not anybody different, and you're just there telling the weather and telling those people. I think that would make a great book. That's real. So
yeah. Well, now that I know a publisher, I mean, I've written a book, but it was about going through treatment for hepatitis C and chemotherapy, and that was boring.
Well, I just want to tell you, you've become one of my heroes just with Joe. I love your honesty and your compassion, and I'm into the ministry, and I just appreciate your views and everything. And it's just awesome to hear the compassion that you have for your viewers, and that means a lot to me. And I thank you. I just love what you said. Hang on, we are going to get through this together. And if I was in Birmingham, I would have believed that, because I can tell your true sincerity for your followers. That's pretty awesome, and I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And before I came back to Birmingham, it was between Birmingham, coming down here to be chief at this station, or going to Chicago. And my family, my oldest son, who ended up playing college baseball, I thought, well, this will be a better opportunity for him. Got a scholarship, and it all paid off. But I feel like God had me here for a reason. And the way I placed people, I put them in what I called a arc of defense, where I strategically placed all of our reporters to where they would be safe but still be able to cover it. And that leads into the story of this young woman who's now a nurse, of all things. And she and her brother, the brother was the one wearing the helmet. And just I'll try not to drag it out here long, but I have the video. They've given me a copy. Their camera,
Mark, we got all the time in
all the debris falling. Now, they're in Pleasant Grove, which is in west suburb of Birmingham, and they're going, wow, look at all this stuff falling down. Well, they go back inside. The father turns off the camera and sets it on the counter, on his dresser. He said, Mark, I am adamant that I looked and I turned that camera off. And when the tornado was bearing down on them, it was still an EF4. He and his wife and their 2 children, one wearing the helmet and the girl who's now a nurse, their house exploded, and the son got pulled out, landed on his head, survived because of the helmet, and the daughter died. Now, she has told the story that she said, I went to the most peaceful place I've ever been. Everything was blue, and I was being surrounded by a ring of white people. They were all glowing. And I had her on television to talk about it. And she said, but I remember everything was perfect. She said, it was just, I knew where I was. And then I heard my dad's voice going, God, please don't take my baby girl away. Now, he was laying on her, trying to get her to wake up. She said, that's when I started to feel the pain. Well, they finally did get her to an ambulance. And when they got her in the ambulance, she said, all right, there's a lady here. She's going to be in front of her house out in the street. And there's going to be another woman. She's down in the ravine on the other side of the neighborhood. Their names are this and that. Well, they found both women. She didn't know them. Didn't know, and she spit out the names, didn't even know these people. Didn't know the area she was talking about. So I feel like that's where God took a tragedy and intervened and started to make a difference. And that's just one of so many stories, guys. I mean, it's just the impact it had on our area is remarkable. But I don't ever want to go through that again.
Well, I love, like Joey said, if he's first line, I'm second line to read your book. That's
well,
awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love the stories.
And guys, I do appreciate you having me on. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to kind of get ready here, but this has been a treat, and I've enjoyed getting to see all of you. And hopefully, next time we talk, it'll be about something that is a little more positive. But you guys be safe out there, especially if you're chasing. And just remember the people that you're out there in front of, they trust you. and don't take that lightly. Be proud of it, but just realize whether you are in front of a camera or behind, however they're getting that information, every one of you, you're important, and they're going to trust you. So, do the best you can, but just be you.
Thank you. That's awesome. I got cold chills, and that's never happened before. Mark, go ahead. If you want to, promote your social media. I would love for all our followers to follow you and somehow stay in touch with you.
Yeah, on Twitter I'm just at Mark Prater, and then I'm sort of on Google+, but also on Facebook, Mark Prater, WIAT42. So, and any of you guys ever need anything, please feel free to drop me an email.
We'll do it. And thanks so much, Mark, and we'd love to have you on some other time. Hopefully, with a much better topic. We'll find
Absolutely. I'll be glad to do it, guys.
And I promise not to call you Matt Prater the kicker.
Hey, look, you know what? I was a kicker in high school. He stole my I should have been kicking for the Broncos and the Lions. But whenever he misses, I go, that's not my cousin, no.
That's awesome. Mark, thank you so much. Have a great newscast tonight.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you. All right, guys. That was awesome. I don't know. I keep saying we have great shows, but that has to top up there one of the best.
Like I said, it's always incredible to me. I should be doing stats homework, but I'm still sitting here listening to stories because, they're always so remarkable and always so different. As I told Mark and as I've said to my friends and family before, and I'm telling some of my friends and family, go back and watch some of the things Mark said tonight, especially, how he was impacted by the storms or what his thoughts were, how he got sick in his driveway because his nerves were so bad. That's how, I think a lot of meteorologists think. That's how we treat things like this. And most people don't get the whole, well, why do you care that, you're going to have tornadoes? What, you don't meet the people, but you kind of do. You connect with them because you feel somewhat of a personal connection to everyone who listens to you, or you think that you can get information out to them, and you can't. You can't get the information to everyone. However, you can certainly try your damn hardest to do it, so why not?
Yeah, and I know all of us, we have a group chat that we talk to one another, and when we see big weather days like this, I mean, there is a virtual concern for who follows us, if it's up in the Tri-Cities or here in the foothills or in Charlotte or out on the eastern part of the state. I mean, we all have a genuine concern for those who come to us for their weather information.
As nervous, just like Mark was saying, as nervous as you get in those situations, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but those are those moments that we all kind of live for too, though, I mean, you don't want to see it happen, but when that happens, it's time to step up. And I know Austin and Kit, are looking toward their future in meteorology, and that day will come for each of you. And when it does, I mean, it's our center field for the Yankees. I mean, that's it. It's your time, and you got to do what you got to do your job. And like I said, as nervous as you are and throwing up, it's going on the big stage in Madison Square Garden or something like that to a musician. It's our time, and that's it. I mean, as bad as it is, and as bad as we don't want it to happen, it is what we all kind of live for that moment. That it's time. It's our time to stand up and do our job.
Yeah, you're right. And speaking of getting nervous, I don't know if Joey has a rant, and this may not be his rant if he does have a rant, but I got kind of nervous with the wording that was put out earlier this week from our local weather office here in the Carolinas. Something that you normally don't see from our weather office, but they put out a public information statement about the potential of severe weather Monday. Thankfully, it didn't pan out, but the wording in that was pretty strong.
And yeah. Let's not forget, too, that the office communications failed about 30 minutes after that message was sent out and went out until the end of the system too, but totally unrelated, I'm sure.
Joey?
yeah. I could rant all day about that, but I think I'm going to save it because I think that's a show topic coming up. I think overhyping, whether it be from the weather service, from your local TV Met, from just some guy with his Facebook weather page. I find it funny how often you hear the guys from TV or the guys from National Weather Service complain about some guy who hypes up a weather system on his personal page, and yet here we are watching the National Weather Service and TV meteorologists doing the exact same thing. So, I think that would be a great show to go on, and the whole National Weather the office going down with their internet. That was odd. I just leave it at odd. I leave it at odd. It was miraculous timing. I'll tell you that.
Do you want to? I know we are going to do a show about this. We just got to find the right guest and line it up. But kind of fill in the people who are watching who may have not heard about this statement. Just kind of hit the high points.
Oh. Well, I mean, the main part about the statement was just simple. It said that they expected larger than average tornadoes. And I don't have it right in front of me to pull up exact wording, but that's basically what it said. Larger than the normal tornadoes we see in our area, I believe was how it was put. Somebody might be able to go find it before I'm
looking it up right now.
Before I even get it, to know the exact wording. But I mean, that's basically what it said. Was we expect larger than average tornadoes, and then maybe somebody went back to try to delete it and they shut down the internet. I don't know.
Here's what it said. Here's what it said. This is from GSP. This was a public information statement, so this was broadcasted to us as well as the public. An outbreak of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes is expected across the area today. This is an unusual weather situation for the Western Carolinas and Northeast Georgia, as some of the tornadoes could be much stronger than those that typically affect the region. It is important to pay close attention to the weather today. Consider postponing any unnecessary trips or events. Monitor NOAA All Hazard Weather Radio or your local news media outlets for the latest weather information.
And there was no tornado in GSP's market on Monday.
And they went out. There was no communication from them.
Right, correct. They apparently had an internet outage. I don't know who to blame, but I would sure be talking to somebody in that situation. I don't know if it was an IT guy inside the weather office. I don't know if somebody needs to have a talk with their internet service provider, but there's definitely.
Joey, Pat Moore from the Greer office came and talked to my forecasting class today, and he was saying that somewhere up the line, their T1 line, I think it was, got cut, and they're in and out for all their internets, like all the way down in Greer. So someone cut something, apparently.
What concerns me, and this is somewhat related but somewhat not, is doesn't the Weather Service have backup lines? It seems like in something as critical as a government office that's deemed so critical that they don't even shut it down during the government shutdown we had, they would have a backup line for their regular line. So is that maybe a funding issue? Why don't offices have something like that? Because we've had instances where no weather radio has been cut out before too, and it's a telephone wire or something goes bad. Why don't we have a secondary backup for something like that? Is it monetary reasons? What's the driving reason behind why there isn't another dedicated cable?
And I heard a rumor that part of Oklahoma, maybe even part of Texas, was the National Weather Service office was down today, with another pending event.
Yeah, Southern Region headquarters have been having issues. Offices in the SRH have been having issues, I think, for the past day or so. So there have been a few issues around the Weather Service, but.
And Ricky and Joey, before we close out on this topic, you guys really know what I'm going to talk about. Kit in Austin, also not so much because he doesn't live in our area. Kit probably knows a little bit about this well, but in the Western Carolinas, we're kind of in no man's land anyway with radar coverage. We don't have an adequate radar to cover our area anyway, and then you have radars from Columbia, South Carolina, Blacksburg, Virginia, Raleigh, and Morristown, Tennessee covering our area when GSP went out, and that just kind of basically gave us no radar at all, to be honest with you.
According to the National Weather Service, though, they were able to see the radar. We just weren't able to see the radar.
Yeah, and that's what he was saying. But like Scotty was saying, the no man's land. We were looking at radar scope trying to find the hail core. Well, the one out of Columbia showed a very nice hail core, but Raleigh had absolutely nothing. It was just too high of an angle by the time it got here. And same thing out of Roanoke, like it just didn't show what it was. The best one that we had was Columbia, and it was still practically a tilt 2.
Yeah, so it was a no-win situation for us. So we're going to close out. We're past 9:30.
Let me just make one quick statement. I'm not saying the National Weather Service is bad. Those guys, they 90% of the time do a great job. I'm not saying that. I just
we're just saying their IT department is bad.
And they did
maybe that's the case.
And they did have a tornado warned storm, so give them that.
Well, yeah, and the same way with the incident a few weeks back and more with the tornado, 90% of the time the National Weather Service does just fine. But I think that when mistakes do happen, I feel like I'd feel a lot more comfortable if they would stand up and say, "Whoops, we made a mistake, and now we're going to go look and see what went wrong, and they're going to come back and say, this is what went wrong, and this is what we did to fix it." But you never hear that, and I think that's my biggest problem. I know when I make a mistake, and I told, when I trained salespeople for years, I told them, when you make a mistake, after every sale you do, whether it's a successful or it's a failure, you go back and look at what you did, you find out what you did right, what you did wrong, you fix the mistakes, and you keep what you did right. I don't know if the National Weather Service does that. Maybe they do internally, and we never hear about it or see it. I don't know. I'd like to talk to somebody who can tell me that happens. I'd feel a lot better about it. But I mean, again, 90% of the time they do just fine.
And so we're going to close out the show. Joey and Ricky are talking about stories. We were going to have stories galore next month, next week, month, whatever it is. Next week.
We could go a whole another year with our next guest. I guarantee you.
We could. I guarantee you we'll go close to 2 hours, as long as our guest doesn't have anything after us. But Gary England, the chief, he was the chief meteorologist at, I can't remember the station, but he was the man. Channel 9 out in Oklahoma City. He was the man for how many years?
He started in 1972. Somebody else do the math.
Yeah, so I want to say, 30, 40 years, something like that?
40 couple years, I guess.
Yeah, 40-some years. So Gary England's going to be joining us next week. I fell in love with the guy out in Oklahoma City when I met him a couple weeks or months ago, so I think you guys will enjoy him as well. He will talk about everything you want to know about tornadoes. And he's got a lot of crazy stories as well. So we have Gary England on with us next week. So make sure you join us. Follow our Facebook pages. And again, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. And if you did, if you're still watching and listening, send Mr. Prater and Mr. Wyatt, Wes, a tweet. And let them know that you enjoyed them coming on. Since Wes wasn't here, let me pull up his Twitter account right quick. So you guys will have that. It's at... the little @ symbol, Wes, W-E-S, Wyatt, W-Y-A-T-T, Weather. And that's Wes Wyatt, our guest from Fox 6 in Birmingham. And in his little avatar picture, it's him on a computer beside a hedgehog. Or, yeah, something like that. Hedgehog or groundhog, something like that. So if you find him on Twitter, that's his picture. So thanks for watching tonight. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, folks.